Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, we travel to Ravencrest Hall, a grand yet brooding estate where moonlight reveals far more than it hides. Behind locked chamber doors, a chilling death sparks whispers through the corridors, and only the brilliant mind of Hercule Poirot can untangle the web of secrets hidden within these ancient walls. Settle in. Breathe slowly and let your imagination follow the faint echo of footsteps across stone floors. For the mystery of Ravencrest Hall begins now. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Ravencrest Hall. The After 1. The Ravencrest Hall, the Ast. Letter arrived on a pale silver morning, slipped neatly beneath the door of Hercule Poirot's London flat. Its envelope, thick and cream-colored, bore the elegant crest of Ravencrest Hall, a soaring raven carved into a shield of moon and stone. Poirot raised an eyebrow, for invitations bearing such artistry seldom meant simple social gatherings. He slid open the envelope with a precise motion. Monsieur Poirot, we humbly invite you to the 30th anniversary celebration of Lord Ashcombe. At Ravencrest Hall, your presence would be an honor on this special evening. Moonlight chambers await your brilliance. Lady Helena Ashcombe Poirot frowned softly. Moonlight chambers await your brilliance. Ah, mon Dieu, that is either flattery or a warning. He arrived at Ravencrest Hall 2 evenings later. The mansion rose from Yorkshire cliffs like a cathedral carved from shadow. Its towering stone walls were veined with silver moss. Its windows glowed with warm candlelight. Its gothic arches framed a sky dominated by a full winter moon. As Poirot ascended the marble steps, the wind carried faint strains of violin music from within. A butler greeted him with a bow. Welcome to Ravencrest Hall, monsieur. Inside, chandeliers sparkled like constellations. Guests in fine attire mingled beneath portraits of Ashcombe ancestors, stern men with quills, sharp-eyed women whose expressions hinted at secrets buried centuries deep. Poirot took a glass of champagne and observed. Lord Ashcombe, tall and dignified with iron-gray hair, stood surrounded by admirers. His wife, Lady Helena, radiant in silver silk, greeted guests gracefully yet with an undercurrent of tension. Several others caught Poirot's eye. Philip Harrington, Lord Ashcombe's cousin lean, sharp-featured, a man whose eyes darted like a bird's. Miss Clara Wren, the governess calm, reserved, almost invisible among the nobles. Mr. Alistair Gable, the solicitor rigid posture, cold eyes, expression carefully unreadable. Evelyn Hartmore, a young woman with a troubled gaze and a hand that trembled as she lifted her glass. Poirot saw something else, something faint but unmistakable. Fear. Not open fear, not panic, but a tension that lived beneath polished manners. Like cracks beneath marble. He approached Lady Helena, who welcomed him warmly but with trembling fingers. Mr. Poirot, thank you for coming. You must forgive the atmosphere Ravencrest has. History. Poirot smiled. Mais oui, all great houses do. Before she could respond, a sudden hush rippled across the ballroom. Philip Harrington had raised his glass. A toast, he said loudly, to 30 years of Ashcombe legacy, and to truths that refuse to remain buried. The room stiffened. Lord Ashcombe's jaw tightened. Lady Helena paled. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Philip smiled thinly and drained his glass. Poisonous tension returned beneath the music as if nothing had happened. Later that night, as guests drifted toward their assigned rooms, Poirot explored the east wing on foot. The moonlight, filtering through tall windows, illuminated dust motes that danced like spirits. Several doors bore iron locks, old, heavy, and unused for decades. A maid hurried past him, nearly stumbling. "Monsieur, you should not linger here," she whispered. "Not on a moonlit night, Pourquoi?" Poirot asked gently. She hesitated. "Because this wing hides things better left unseen." Then she rushed away. Poirot's mustache twitched thoughtfully. He stepped deeper into the jeeper, into the Condon de Coendesh hallway. One door stood out, the moonlit chamber. Its wooden surface gleamed with silver reflections from the window, though inside darkness reigned. Poirot approached, sensing history, secrets, a story waiting to breathe again, and then a faint whisper, a flicker of shadow, a feeling of being watched. Poirot turned sharply. Nothing but silence. He smiled lightly. "Ah, Ravencrest Hall," he murmured. "You do not disappoint." But the night had not finished with him. Just as he reached his own chamber door, a scream tore through the mansion, raw, desperate, unmistakably human. Poirot spun. The sound came from the moonlit chamber. Chapter 2. Moonlight in the East Wing. Guests burst into the East Wing corridor as the scream echoed through the great hallways. Candles flickered in trembling hands. Robes and dressing gowns swayed as shocked faces appeared from every room. Poirot was already moving. He reached the door of the moonlit chamber, locked, heavy, ancient. Lady Helena arrived, pale as moonlight itself. "Not again," she whispered. "Madame?" Poirot asked sharply, but before she could answer, Lord Ashcombe forced his way forward. "Stand back," he commanded. He pounded the door. "Philip, Philip, answer me." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Philip Harrington?" The man who had offered this strange toast. Silence. Poirot pressed his ear against the door. Nothing. "Inspector Graves." Lord Ashcombe shouted to a man who had just arrived from the guest quarters. The local inspector stepped forward with 2 servants. "Break it," Graves ordered. With 3 shoves, the door splintered inward, crashing open to reveal the moonlit chamber. Gasps erupted. Philip Harrington lay sprawled on the floor, illuminated by a single moonbeam streaming through the tall window. His eyes were open, frozen in shock. A thin trickle of blood marked his temple. His hand reached toward the window, as though pointing at something unseen, but the window was locked from inside. Poirot knelt beside the body. No weapon, no sign of struggle, no overturned furniture except a single chair, a locked door, a locked window. A dead man, a classic impossibility. Lord Ashcombe staggered backward. He cannot be dead." "He cannot," Poirot spoke calmly. "There is no heartbeat." Lady Helena buried her face in her hands. Inspector Graves frowned deeply. "So he struck his head on the floor? Accident?" Poirot shook his head. "No, Inspector, look." Harrington's collar was slightly crooked, pulled. A faint bruise around his neck suggested pressure fingers or cloth. Poirot stood. This was no accident. The guests whispered fearfully. Clara Wren, the governess, whispered. The chambers cursed. Death always returns on moonlit nights. Poirot turned sharply. Always? She bit her lip, refusing to speak further. Poirot looked around. A locked room murder. A house full of secrets. A victim who had threatened truths during a toast. He examined the lock. Old. Sturdy. No sign of tampering. Meaning. The killer had been inside the room, or had escaped through a means not yet visible. Poirot approached the tall window. He examined the latch. Tight. Secure. But he noticed something. A faint smudge on the glass. Fingerprint? No, more like fabric. Rubbed against it. Poirot observed. Everything. The untouched dust on the mantel. The candle that had burned halfway, not lit by stuff, a missing letter opener from the desk seat, a faint smell of perfume not belonging to. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Ms. Amos, he said softly. The killer has left us many clues. Inspector Graves exhaled. But how did he escape? Ah, Poirot answered. That is the question Ravencrest Hall does not want us to ask. Behind them, Evelyn Hotmore trembled violently. Clara whispered something to her. Poirot noticed that fear, shared knowledge, guilt or danger. Poirot stood in the moonlight, his silhouette sharp. Lock the room, he said. No one enters again. Lord Ashcombe approached him, face gray. Poirot, please find the truth. Whatever it is. Poirot nodded once. The truth, monsieur, he said softly, is already here. It only hides in shadows. He touched the chamber door, and in the moonlight. Chapter 3, Shadows in the Family Portraits by Morning. The winter sky over Ravencrest Hall had turned the color of cold ash. Servants moved quietly through corridors, their footsteps muted as if the entire house had agreed to whisper. Inspector Graves had sealed the moonlit chamber. 2 constables guarded the door. No one entered. No one left. No one. Except Hercule Poirot, and he had already seen all he needed for now. He walked alone through the portrait gallery that connected the east wing to the main staircase. The eyes of generations of Ashcombes watched him pass, dukes, soldiers, judges, and ladies with sharp cheekbones and sharper expressions. Poirot stopped before one particular painting. A young man, perhaps in his 20s, stood beside the balcony of Ravencrest Hall, the same moonlit cliffs behind him. His gaze was restless, his posture tense. The plaque read, Andrew Ashcombe, 1896 1917. Lost at the front. Lady Helena's reflection appeared beside Poirot's in the glass of the frame. You see it too, don't you? She said quietly. The resemblance. Poirot turned. To whom, madame? To Philip, she whispered. He idolized Andrew. Said the family never forgave itself for letting him die for a cause that meant nothing in the end. Poirot studied the brushstrokes. Did Philip feel out of place at Ravencrest? Lady Helena exhaled. Financially, yes. Emotionally, no. He always said the blood in his veins was older than the bricks in these walls. He was proud and resentful. Lord Ashcombe inherited the estate, and Philip inherited stories. And yet, Poirot said, he was invited to this celebration. She hesitated. Family is complicated, Mr. Poirot. We had quarreled in the past, but he was still one of us. Edward, Lord Ashcombe, believed this gathering might heal old wounds. Poirot's mustache twitched. Instead, it opened them. She closed her eyes briefly. Philip was threatening to challenge the will, she admitted. He claimed there was an older version in which he stood to inherit more. He said the solicitor, Mr. Gable, had rearranged certain terms to his benefit. Did you believe him? Poirot asked. She smiled bitterly. Belief matters less in such halls than proof. And Philip, for all his sharp words, loved drama. He liked to stand in a room and rattle the chandeliers. Poirot's gaze softened. And yet, last night it was not chandeliers that shook, but the walls themselves. He moved on, walking the length of the gallery. He found Evelyn Hartmore standing at the far end, staring at a portrait of a woman with tired eyes and an almost embarrassed smile. She was pushed here too soon. Evelyn murmured. Poirot paused. You mean the woman in the painting? He asked. Evelyn nodded. Beatrice Ashcombe. Married at 20, widowed at 22. Never meant for this place. It swallowed her whole. Poirot tilted his head. And you feel similar, mademoiselle? She gave a small, humorless laugh. Ravencrest Hall is not kind to outsiders. You are exceptional. You arrive with invitation and reputation. The rest of us? Her eyes lingered on Philip's portrait in the distance. We are allowed in only if we don't disturb the furniture. Poirot regarded her carefully. You knew Philip well? Yes, she said softly. Too well, and not well enough. A curious answer. She sighed. Philip believed the Ashcombe legacy owed him something. I believed the Ashcombe legacy owed no one anything. We argued about it often. Poirot folded his hands. And last night? Her voice dropped. He came to my room before dinner. Said he'd found something important. That tonight would change everything. He asked if I'd stand by his side if it came to a fight. She looked away. I told him I was tired of fights in this house. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He did not say what he had found, only that it was locked away but not forgotten. Evelyn replied. I thought he meant a document. A letter. Something in the study. Poirot glanced once more at the line of portraits. Ravencrest keeps too many locked things, he murmured. Rooms Will's hearts. He left her there, standing between the past and the present. Inspector Graves joined Poirot in the smaller drawing-room, where the guests had been gathered for questioning. The atmosphere was brittle, like porcelain waiting to crack. Lord Ashcombe sat stiffly by the fireplace, staring into the flames. Lady Helena hovered near the window. Mr. Gable, the solicitor, sat in a straight-back chair, hands folded neatly, eyes cold. Clara Wren observed quietly from a corner, almost blending into the wallpaper. Graves cleared his throat loudly. All right, he said. We'll go one by one. But first, no one leaves this estate. Not until we understand how a man died in a locked room under your roof." Mr. Gable sniffed. "This is highly irregular, Inspector. Dead men tend to disrupt paperwork." Graves shot back. Poirot stepped forward. "Smooth as ever. If you please, Inspector, I will begin." Graves gestured. "He's all yours." Poirot faced the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, "this is not a random killing. It is intimate. The locked room tells us something crucial. The killer is confident in the architecture, the timing, and the people here. This was not the work of a stranger." Lord Ashcombe bristled. "Are you saying someone in my own house killed Philip?" Poirot met his gaze calmly. "I am saying, my lord, that only someone in your house could have." Silence. Poirot's tone softened. "I will ask questions," he said. "Some will be uncomfortable. This is not cruelty. It is necessity." He turned to Mr. Gable first. "Tell me, monsieur," Poirot said, "what was your relationship with Philip Harrington?" Gable gave a tight smile. "Professional, irritating. He loved to challenge clauses he barely understood." "And did he threaten your position?" Poirot asked. Gable's lids lowered. "He believed I had manipulated Lord Ashcombe's will, that I had influenced certain trusts. Childish fantasies. The kind penny-drunk cousins invent when they realize they've spent their share in their heads." Poirot remained unmoved. "And where were you," he asked, "when the scream was heard?" "In my room," Gable replied, "reviewing a document Lord Ashcombe had asked me to amend. I stepped out only when the corridor erupted with shouting." Poirot inclined his head. "We shall confirm that," he said. He looked then to Clara Wren. "Mademoiselle, you said something very interesting in the chamber last night. Death always returns on moonlit nights. That is quite specific." Clara clasped her hands tighter. "I shouldn't have said it," she whispered. "House talk. Old superstition." Poirot's gaze stayed gentle. "Sometimes superstition is memory in disguise." She swallowed. "Years ago," she began, "before I came here, there was another death. A young maid. They said she slipped from the balcony near the moonlit chamber on a night like this. Some swore they heard an argument first, but it was called an accident. The staff still say the moonlit chamber claims those who disturb its secrets." "Ah," Poirot murmured. "And Philip? Did he disturb them?" "Yes," Clara replied faintly. "He was always drawn to locked doors and closed drawers." Poirot felt a small tug in the pattern forming in his mind. A prior accident. A room with a history. A cousin obsessed with inheritance. A solicitor with much to lose. And someone who had been in that wing long enough to know every hidden corner. He folded his arms. "Tersbeen," he said. "Now, we must look not only at who benefited from Philip's death, but how it was possible." His eyes gleamed, and for that, we return to the moonlit chamber itself. Chapter 4. A room that refused to speak. The moonlit chamber felt colder in daylight. The silver aura of the previous night had vanished, replaced by a dull, gray pallor. Dust motes spun lazily in the air, visible in shafts of muted sunlight that pushed through the tall window. Poirot stepped inside alone this time. The constables allowed him through and closed the door behind him. Leaving him with the silence, he moved slowly. The body was gone, taken for examination. But its outline lingered in Poirot's mind. Philip reaching toward the window. The bruise at his neck. The trickle of blood at his temple. The untouched furnishings. Poirot stood in the center of the room and closed his eyes. He replayed the moment. Philip alive, tense, pacing. Philip nearing the door, perhaps expecting someone. A visitor entering. Someone he recognized. No signs of struggle, so the first blow must have been a surprise. Poirot opened his eyes. He focused on the Thonko desk, neatly arranged inkstand, blotter, stack of unused paper. But there was a faint square of cleaner wood, just one spot, where something had lain for some time and was now absent. Something important, Poirot whispered. Perhaps what he told Evelyn he had found. He turned to the bedside table. A glass of water, untouched, no scent of anything added. The wardrobe. Nothing overturned. Clothes undisturbed. He knelt where Philip's head had struck the floor. Ran a gloved hand lightly across the boards. No loose nails. No trick panels, he murmured. He then approached the door. From the inside, the lock was simple, key on a ring placed on the small table by the wall. If locked from within, the key would have to be turned while still inside. Unless it had been manipulated. Poirot tested it. No hidden catches. No coverable openings. He moved to the window. Tall, lidded glass panes. Iron latch. Sill high but reachable. Beyond, a sheer drop to the north lawn and a stone terrace. He examined the latch. There, at the base of the inner frame, he saw what he had suspected earlier. A hairline scratch, fresh, tiny, barely visible. As if something thin passed here, he said. Something like wire. He looked again at the lock on the door, then back at the window. Then at Philip's last stretched out pose. Ah, Poirot murmured. Perhaps the room did speak after all. He turned suddenly toward the fireplace. The ashes in the grate were mostly cold, but there, among the charred remnants of paper, edges of ink were still visible. Not enough to read, but enough to suggest recent burning. Poirot used the poker to spread them gently. Half a line survived. Clause is not recognized by the original. He smiled grimly. Philip, he said softly, you were trying to confront someone before they erased you. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Inspector Graves peeked inside. Well? Graves asked. Tell me you've found something other than dust and melodrama. Poirot nodded. But of course. I have found the absence of something. And, mon ami, that is often more revealing than anything present. He pointed to the clean patch on the desk. Philip claimed to Evelyn he had found something, Poirot said. A document, perhaps. It lay here. It is gone now. Graves frowned. Gable? Possibly, Poirot said. But do not forget others who know where papers live, governesses, ladies, even servants who dust too carefully. He then showed Graves the scratched window frame. Thin wire passed here, Poirot said. Likely used to tamper with the lock from outside. But to do so, one would need to be on the terrace below and know precisely where to feed it through. Graves' eyes widened. Are you telling me someone locked this door while they were outside the room? Exactement, Poirot replied. A staged locked room. Very dramatic. Our killer likes theatrics. Graves blew out a low whistle. And the bruise? He asked. Neck, head, which came first? Head struck floor after he fell, Poirot said. But the neck, that is from a sudden forceful tightening. A scarf. A rope. Something looped briefly, used to shock and disorient, not to strangle fully. He collapsed, hit his temple, and died. It is possible the killer did not intend death, only panic. Graves grunted. Still murder. Oh, absolutely, Poirot agreed. One does not accidentally loop a cord around a man's neck in a locked room. He stepped back, taking in the whole space. The killer came through the door as someone Philip trusted. They argued. Something was shown, perhaps the missing document. The killer panicked. There was a struggle of moments, not minutes. Philip was knocked. He fell. He died. The killer, thinking swiftly, took the paper, left by the door, then used a long wire from the terrace to relock it, creating the illusion. And the window? Graves asked. Why lock that too? Because an unlocked window would raise questions sooner, Poirot said. The killer is neat. They like tidy puzzles. Graves shook his head. This is sounding more like that solicitor of yours. Poirot's gaze drifted toward the wall, where an old tapestry hung, depicting a hunt beneath a full moon. Perhaps, Poirot said. Or perhaps someone who has watched him all these years and learned from him. He turned to Graves. Now we know how, Poirot said. Soon we will know who. And then? Graves asked. Poirot looked once more at the lock. The window, the faint ash in the grate. Then, Mon ami, he said softly, we shall ask Ravencrest Hall why it keeps trying to bury its dead under moonlight instead of earth. Chapter 5. Conversations in half-shadowy late afternoon. The house had begun to fracture into little pockets of silence. Some rooms hummed with hushed whispers. Others were tomb-quiet. The staff moved like ghosts, speaking only when spoken to. The air felt heavy not with dust, but with unsaid things. Hercule Poirot chose his next step carefully. He found Lord Ashcombe alone in the library, staring at the rows of leather-bound volumes as if they'd betrayed him. "Milord," Poirot said gently, "may I disturb your war with the books?" Ashcombe exhaled. "They're the only things in this house which don't answer back, Poirot. For now, I prefer them." Poirot smiled faintly. "And yet, even they sometimes hide secrets in their pages." He approached. "You and Philip," he said. "Your relationship." It was strained. Ashcombe's jaw tightened. Philip wanted what he believed the world owed him, he said. I wanted peace. He thought I stole his path. I thought he squandered the one he had. We were, I suppose, both wrong and both right. Poirot folded his hands. He challenged your will, he said. Accused Mr. Gable of influencing it. He accused everyone of hiding something, Ashcombe said bitterly. Perhaps he was half right. This house was built on secrets. But I did not kill him, Mr. Poirot. If I had wanted him gone, I could have done it legally with distance, not death. Yet his death benefits you, Poirot said calmly. The challenge dies with him. Ashcombe flinched, then forced himself steady. Does grief ever benefit anyone? He asked quietly. I lost the last link to my brother's bloodline. Philip was difficult, but he was ours, mine. Poirot looked at the fireplace and this house. He asked, Does it belong to you? Or do you belong to it? Ashcombe's gaze drifted to the carved ceiling. That, he murmured, is the one question Ravencrest never answers. Poirot left him there and sought Mr. Alistair Gable, the solicitor. He found him in a smaller study, organizing papers he claimed needed order. Always the paperwork, monsieur, Poirot observed. Even amid tragedy. Gable straightened a stack. Death produces more paperwork than birth, Mr. Poirot. Someone must manage it. You have managed a great deal, I think, Poirot replied, including the legal fate of Ravencrest. Gable's lips thinned. I followed Lord Ashcombe's instructions precisely. Poirot's eyes sparkled, and yet Philip believed differently. He claimed there was an original will in which his portion was greater. If such a will existed, its discovery would prove. Troublesome for you, Nan? Gable's expression cooled to ice. If such a document existed, he said, it would have been superseded by the current will. I am not incompetent, Mr. Poirot. Oh, I do not doubt your competence, Poirot said. Only your conscience. Tell me, on the night of the murder, you claim you were reading in your room. Did anyone see you? Gable hesitated a fraction of a second. Lady Helena passed my door, he said. She will confirm. She asked me something about the guest list. Poirot nodded slightly, and before the scream, he asked, Did Philip speak with you? Gable's gaze dropped briefly to the papers. He cornered me after dinner, he admitted. Waved a folded document in my face. Claimed he had proof that Ravencrest had been stolen from him and that I had abetted it. I told him he was being theatrical. He said, You'll hear my side soon enough, perhaps before the entire family. Poirot's mustache twitched. And this document he waved, where is it now? He asked mildly. Gable's fingers tightened on the edge of the desk. I have no idea, he replied. Perhaps he burned it in melodramatic despair. Poirot smiled without warmth. Perhaps, he said. Or perhaps someone else did. He left Gable staring after him in the upstairs sitting room. Clara Wren sat by a tall arched window, mending a child's garment with calm, precise stitches. The sky beyond had darkened, the moon beginning its slow ascent. Poirot sat opposite her. You are very practiced with the needle, mademoiselle, he observed. Clara nodded without looking up. Children tear things. Life frays them. Someone must learn to sew it all quietly back together. Poirot studied the fine, tough thread she used. Strong, he remarked. Does not break easily. We live in a draughty house, Clara replied. Clothes must endure. He leaned forward slightly. Did you know Philip well? Poirot asked. Her needle paused. I watched him, she said. It is my job to watch. Governesses are like furniture with eyes, Mr. Poirot. We see more than people think we do. And what did you see?" He asked softly. "That Philip liked to prod wounds," she replied. "Emotional ones. Legal ones. He thought if he pressed hard enough, one day the house would cough up everything it had buried. And did he speak with you?" Poirot asked. "Confide." "Not willingly," she said. "He was not a man who trusted easily. But he argued near me often enough not to notice I was there." She resumed stitching. "He accused Mr. Gable of laundering the estate through complex trusts. He accused Lord Ashcombe of choosing reputation over justice. And he accused Evelyn." Clara drifted off. Poirot waited. "Of being too afraid to stand with him," she finished. Poirot's gaze sharpened. "You care for Evelyn?" he asked. Clara's eyes flicked toward the door. "She is young," she said. "And this house does not forgive softness. I try to blunt the edges where I can." Poirot noticed a coil of very fine, very strong wire on the nearby table, used for reinforcing hems. "May I?" he asked, lifting it. "Of course," Clara said. "It is for corset stays and tight collars. Traditional garments strain under pressure." "So do men's necks," Poirot murmured under his breath. She glanced up. "Pardon?" "Nothing, mademoiselle," he said smoothly. "Tell me, on the night of the murder, where were you?" "In the schoolroom," she replied, "finishing reports on the children. I heard the scream, and I came toward the east wing. I met Evelyn in the corridor. We ran the last stretch together." Poirot nodded. "Merci," he said. He left, pocketing nothing, but taking much with him. He found Evelyn Hartmore in the conservatory. Among half-wilted winter plants and the faint smell of earth, "You prefer the glass house to the stone one?" Poirot asked gently. She smiled sadly. "Glass is honest. It shows cracks when it breaks." Poirot joined her. "You said Philip had found something," he reminded her. "Something locked away. Did you mean the will? Or something else?" She stared at the barren trees outside. "My father," she said quietly, "died in disgrace. He invested unwisely, under advice from a man connected to Ravencrest. We lost everything. The only reason I am here is because Lady Helena took pity on us and offered me a place at the edge of the family." "And Philip?" Poirot asked. "He said the same man who ruined my father profited from the restructured estate," she said. "He believed that if he could prove fraud in the will and related trusts, he could topple more than one pillar here." "And you?" Poirot asked. "Did you want that?" She gave a small, bitter laugh. "I wanted justice," she said. "But I did not want blood. I told him so." She turned to Poirot, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You think I wanted him dead?" "I wanted him to get out. To go somewhere the house could not reach him. To go somewhere the house could not reach him." Poirot considered her carefully. "And where were you when he died?" he asked. "In my room," she replied. Angry, I had refused to stand beside him during his grand revelation. I heard the scream and ran into the corridor. Clara met me halfway. Poirot nodded. "One more question, mademoiselle," he said softly. "Have you ever been in the moonlit chamber before last night?" Her face went very still. "Once," she whispered, "by accident, I opened the wrong door in the dark. The maid who was with me years ago told me never to go in there again. She said the room remembers." Poirot's mind gave a small click, like a lock turning. "The maid who warned you?" he asked. "What happened to her?" Evelyn's voice barely rose above a breath. "She fell," she said, "from the balcony outside that chamber. On a moonlit night." She looked up at him, fear plain now, or at least, that was what they told us. Poirot's little gray cells flared. 2 deaths. 1 room, 1 balcony, 1 pattern. "Merci, mademoiselle," he said softly. "You have given me much to think about." Chapter 6. Terrace under the moon. The terrace below the moonlit chamber looked innocent enough in daylight. Its stone floor stretched along the outer wall of the east wing, bordered by a carved balustrade that overlooked the fog-dusted grounds. From here, one could see the cliffs, the distant village, and the skeletal trees that dotted the winter gardens. Poirot and Inspector Graves stepped onto the terrace together. "You're sure this is where the killer stood?" Graves asked. Poirot nodded. "Certain," he said. "If one wishes to lock a room from outside, one must first stand where the lock becomes reachable." He pointed up. From the terrace, they could see the tall window of the moonlit chamber above them. Just beneath its sill, built into the stonework, was a narrow decorative ledge. Poirot walked to the section directly below the chamber. "There," he murmured. On the terrace wall, almost flush with the stone, a small iron ring had been set long ago, perhaps once used to secure a lantern or tie decorative drapery. It was darkened with age, nearly invisible around its base, however. The dust pattern was interrupted, slightly clearer, slightly disturbed. Graves squatted beside it. "So the wire you mentioned," he said slowly, "could have been looped through there, then thrown up over the windowsill and threaded inside through the narrow gap," Poirot finished. "Once inside, it could be hooked to the key or the latch, allowing the killer to pull from below and lock the door after leaving." Graves let out a low whistle. "Someone went through a lot of danger, trouble to make this look like magic." Poirot nodded. "Oui, a clever illusion. But all illusions depend on something solid here, iron and stone." He straightened and walked a slow circuit around the terrace. At one corner, a cluster of dried ivy clung to the wall. Something small gleamed faintly in its tendrils. Poirot carefully plucked it free. A tiny fragment of metal, like a broken tip from a thin wire hook. He held it up. "Our magician," he said, "was not entirely tidy after all." Graves frowned. "Could this come from any wire?" "The house probably has miles of it." "True," Poirot agreed. "Which is why we ask instead, who, in this house, works most often with fine, strong lines under tension?" Graves scratched his head. "Music room uses strings," he offered. "Servants use rope. Governess uses sewing thread." Poirot's gaze turned inward. "Yes," he said, "and some threads are strong enough to act like wire." That evening, Poirot requested a simple experiment. In the moonlit chamber, with the door open, he handed a long, thin wire to Graves. Poirot remained inside the room, while Graves descended to the terrace below. Poirot fed the wire through the gap near the window latch. Graves' voice floated up. "All right. Got it through the ring." "Now," Poirot called. Attaching the wire to the key inside the lock, pull gently. "Inspector." The key began to turn smoothly, silently. Poirot stepped back as the lock clicked home. Graves rejoined him minutes later, slightly winded but impressed. "Well," he said, "you've proved it. It can be done." Poirot spread his hands. "And our killer has likely done it before," he said. "Perhaps not for murder, but for games, tricks, even spying." Graves frowned. "Spying?" Poirot turned toward the wall where the old tapestry hung. "Tell me, Inspector," he said softly, "have you ever felt a draft in a room that should be sealed?" Graves blinked. "Can't say I look for those." Poirot approached the tapestry. It depicted a hunt under the moon, stags fleeing, hounds chasing, riders triumphant. It also billowed ever so slightly as Poirot drew near, not from his movement, but from a gentle, steady current of air. He lifted a corner. Behind it, the stone was not uniform. A thin vertical crack marked the outline of something man-made. Poirot pressed. A hidden panel gave way with a soft, reluctant click, revealing a narrow opening descending into darkness, a secret passage. Graves swore softly. "So there it is," he muttered. "Another way in." Poirot smiled. Exactament. For decades, someone could have entered or left this chamber without the corridor or terrace ever knowing. He stepped close to the darkened opening, peering down the narrow stair. "Imagine," Poirot said quietly, "a maid, years ago, falling from the balcony after an argument. A cousin, now, found dead in a room locked from inside. A governess, a solicitor, a lady, a guest, all living atop bones of old architecture never meant for light." Graves rubbed his face. "So who used it? Who knew about this passage?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Those who have lived here longest," he said. "Those who tuck children into bed and learn the old stories. Those who administer estates and learn the old plans. Those who arrive desperate and dig." He turned away from the dark stair. "The walls of Ravencrest Hall have more than ears, Inspector," he said. "They have corridors." Graves exhaled slowly. "What now?" he asked. "Now," Poirot replied softly, "we watch the people, how they react when they learn the house itself has betrayed their secrets." He let the tapestry fall back into place. "Tomorrow, we invite them all," he said, "to meet us in the great hall. And there we begin to unravel not only how Philip died, but how Ravencrest Hall has been lying to itself for years." Chapter 7. The house that remembered morning broke with a thin, watery light, as if the sky itself were hesitant to look too closely at Ravencrest Hall. Poirot asked that everyone gather in the great hall before noon. They came slowly. Lord Ashcombe, shoulders heavier than the day before. Lady Helena, fingers tied around a handkerchief. Mr. Gable, flawless as ever, though a vein pulsed at his temple. Clara Wren, composed, watchful. Evelyn Hartmore, pale but upright. Inspector Graves, arms folded, eyes sharp. The fire in the grand hearth burned low, casting a faint amber glow beneath. The massive portraits of ancestors who had witnessed too much. Poirot stood near the center, hands lightly clasped behind his back. "Mesdames, messieurs," he began. "Ravencrest Hall is like a man who tells the same story so often he begins to believe it himself. But walls, unlike men, cannot forget. They simply wait for someone to listen." He nodded toward the corridor. 2 constables stepped in, carrying a rolled, dusty parchment and an old, leather-bound folio. Poirot gestured. "These," he said, "were found in the secret passage behind the moonlit chamber. Documents hidden where casual eyes would never look. Plans of the house, old letters, and most important, an earlier will." Mr. Gable stiffened. "That is an accusation by implication," he snapped. "You cannot know when those were placed there." "Oh, but I can make a good guess," Poirot replied calmly. "Some things are older than you, monsieur, and some much newer." He handed one of the parchments to Graves. "This," Poirot said, "is an architectural plan. It confirms the existence of a hidden stair connecting the moonlit chamber, the gallery, and the lower wing. It was used during times of war and fear. Over time, it was forgotten by most, but not by all." He turned slightly. "There are those who roam a house at hours others sleep. Those who tuck away children, repair torn garments, dust forgotten shells. Those who learn where the drafts come from." Clara Wren's eyes flickered only for a second. Poirot continued gently. "And then, there is this." He held up the folio, an original draft of Lord Ashcombe's estate arrangements. Less refined than the current version, but more generous to certain branches of the family. It grants Philip Harrington a much larger stake. It also details how an advisor, unnamed, might be compensated in a creative way. He let the words hang. Gable's lips curled. "This is meaningless. Drafts are not law." "No," Poirot agreed, "but they are motive." He walked slowly, his polished shoes clicking softly against the stone floor. Philip claimed he had found something locked away. Poirot said, "Something that would change everything." He confronted Mr. Gable. He hinted to Evelyn. He threatened spectacle. He looked at Gable. "You feared him, monsieur," Poirot said. "You feared he might uncover the creative arrangements by which you profited from Ravencrest in ways the Ashcombes never fully understood." Gable straightened, eyes flashing. "You think I killed him?" he demanded. "Strangled him in a locked room like some cheap melodrama?" Poirot shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "I think you have been greedy, perhaps even dishonest. But the murder? None. That belongs to someone else." The room shifted. Everyone seemed to breathe again briefly. Poirot turned to Lord and Lady Ashcombe. "You both knew of the maid who fell from the balcony years ago," he said softly. "You chose silence. It was easier than scandal, easier than losing the illusion of a perfect house." Lady Helena paled. "How did you—" she began. "Because the story is still written in Evelyn's memory," Poirot said. "And in Clara's eyes every time that balcony is mentioned." He stepped toward the governess now. "Mademoiselle Wren," he said. "You were not yet governess then, but you were in service here, non? A lower position. closer to the maids, closer to the corridors no one else sees. Clara's hands folded in her lap. Yes, she said quietly. I was younger, cheaper. Poirot nodded. On that moonlit night long ago, he continued softly, there was an argument near the moonlit chamber. A maid who had seen too much, who threatened to say too much. A struggle near the balcony. A fall. It was called an accident. But you, Mademoiselle Clara, you knew it was not. Clara's jaw tightened. The house had a way of making accidents seem convenient, she said. Poirot's tone remained gentle. You learned then, I think, how easily truth could be buried in this place. You decided, if no one would protect the helpless, you would. Quietly, invisibly, you would learn the secret ways, the hidden stair, the house's old tricks. He took a step closer, and when Philip Harrington arrived, he said, prodding wounds, threatening exposure, ready to use truth not as healing but as a weapon. Your old fear awoke. Clara's breathing had changed shallow, controlled. You thought of Evelyn, Poirot said. Of children. Of staff who would be ruined if Ravencrest and Lord Ashcombe collapsed under scandal. You saw Philip as the spark that might burn it all down. Not carefully, not cleanly, just destructively. His voice softened further. You did not intend to kill him, I think. But you did intend to frighten him. You lured him to the moonlit chamber, perhaps with a note suggesting you'd found the earlier will. You chose that room because you knew its history, its balcony, its secret passage. Evelyn whispered, Clara. Clara didn't look at her. Poirot went on. You entered through the secret stair, he said. Not the door. You confronted him there, told him to stop, to leave Ravencrest before he tore it apart. He laughed, or dismissed you, or said something cruel. You had a length of tough cord, the same type you use for altering garments. You looped it around his neck, not to strangle fully, but to jolt him, to show him you were not furniture. His voice grew very quiet, but fear and anger are bad seamstresses, mademoiselle. They pull too tight. He struggled, stumbled, and fell. His head struck the floor. In one moment, argument became murder. Silence. Everyone stared at Clara. Clara's eyes had grown bright, but no tears fell. And then Graves asked roughly, The locked room? Poirot nodded. She panicked, he said. But she is also intelligent. She knew of the iron ring on the terrace, of the narrow gap at the window. She had used the trick before, perhaps as a childish game. She slipped out through the secret passage, ran down, used a wire to turn the key inside, and lock the door from outside. Graves swallowed. And the missing document? He asked. Burned, Poirot said, glancing at Clara. In the grate, in the panic. A reflex. Remove the match before it reaches the curtains. Clara finally spoke. I did not burn it for myself, she said quietly. Philip would have brought fire to the entire house. Your precious lord would have fallen. Evelyn would have been tossed aside. The staff, those with nowhere to go, would be turned out. I have watched this house chew people and spit out bones, Mr. Poirot. I would not watch it again. Her voice wasn't hysterical. It was steady, dangerous in its calm. "So yes," she said, "I frightened him. I took the cord around his neck. I wanted him to feel, for once, that the house could push back. I did not mean to kill him." Poirot's gaze was sad. "But he is dead," he said softly. "Yes," she replied. "He died in a room that kills the inconvenient. I simply," became the final push. Chapter 8. The weight of the house Inspector Graves stepped forward slowly. "Clara Wren," he said, tone formal, "you understand what this means?" She nodded once. "I knew when I went to that room," she said. "I crossed a line I cannot uncross." Evelyn's voice broke through. "Clara, no. There must be some way." Clara turned to her, expression finally cracking. "I grew up in houses like this," she said. "Not as a guest. As staff. I've spent my life stitching up the damage other people's pride caused. I told myself it was worth it if it kept the young and the powerless from drowning." She swallowed. "When Philip threatened to expose everything, I saw not justice, but chaos. I did not trust this family, or Gable, or the law to handle truth without crushing the wrong people first." She looked at Poirot. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked. "The way everyone here treats their sins. They cover them in moonlight and call it tradition." Poirot's voice remained gentle but firm. "Justice," he said, "is not a tailor, mademoiselle. It does not always fit perfectly. But to decide alone who must be silenced, that is a weight no one should claim." Lord Ashcombe spoke then, voice rough. "I did not know about the maid," he said. "I was told she slipped. I believed what I wanted to believe. The house has always been managed for me. By advisors, by staff, by people like Gable." Gable flinched. "We clung to appearances," Ashcombe continued. "Maybe if we'd faced our ghosts then, Philip would still be alive." "The fault is not Clara's alone." Graves shook his head. "Maybe not," he said. "But the law doesn't distribute guilt by elegance, my lord." He looked at Clara. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You'll come with us." Clara straightened her back. "I will," she said. "Ask only that whatever happens, Evelyn is left out of it. She doesn't deserve any more ghosts." Evelyn stepped forward, tears finally falling. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "You protected everyone but yourself." "That," Clara said softly, "is what we do." For a moment, even the portraits seemed to bow their heads. Poirot felt the familiar sting behind. His eyes, he had not come to Ravencrest seeking tragedy. But tragedy, he knew, rarely asked permission before setting the table. Chapter 9. Threads that hold. Threads that break. The days that followed were slow and strangely quiet. Clara Wren was taken into custody. Inspector Graves remained at Ravencrest, compiling statements and arranging the legal machinery that must grind. However imperfectly, Mr. Gable retreated to his papers, abruptly cooperative, perhaps sensing that scrutiny on Clara did not mean immunity for him. Lord and Lady Ashcombe walked the halls more like guests than owners. Poirot wandered the grounds once more before. Leaving Dot, he found Evelyn near the old balcony. outside the moonlit chamber, arms wrapped around herself. "You will leave?" she asked without turning. "Yes," Poirot said. "My work here is finished. The rest belongs to the courts, to time, and to you." She laughed hollowly. "Ravencrest feels different," she said. "Lighter and heavier at the same time. As if someone pried up a stone and now we can smell what was buried underneath." Poirot nodded. "Clara's act was wrong," he said. "But her fear was not invented. This house has used silence as plaster for a long time." Evelyn's jaw set. "Then maybe it's time we stopped patching cracks," she said, "and started rebuilding." Poirot smiled a little. Spoken like a woman who may yet own more of this place than its corridors. He said. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "The original draft of the will, the hidden agreements Gable helped sculpt, the manner in which your father was ruined with the help of Ashcombe-connected advice." He spread his hands. "There will be inquiries, perhaps settlements, perhaps restitution. If Lord Ashcombe chooses to be a different kind of Ashcombe than those on the walls, he will call you to the table, not as charity, but as equal." Evelyn looked stunned. "You think he would?" "Guilt," Poirot said softly, "can either rot a man or move him. We shall see which path he chooses." She nodded slowly. "And you?" she asked. "What do you choose after seeing so much ugliness?" Poirot glanced toward the horizon, where the sun was struggling through thin clouds. "I choose," he said, "to remember not only the ugliness, but the courage. Philip, who chased truth clumsily but bravely. Clara, who tried to protect others even as she fell. You, who stayed soft in a hard house." He smiled faintly. "And of course, I choose good chocolate on the train." She laughed despite herself. "Thank you, Mr. Poirot," she said, "for seeing us." "It is my work," he replied. "And my curse," "And my curse." Chapter 10. When Moonlight lets Goon his final morning at Ravencrest Hall, Poirot stood once more at the base of the drive, suitcase at his feet. The mansion loomed behind him, but it felt changed. Less like a fortress, more like a patient waking from a long, troubled sleep. Inspector Graves approached, hat in hand. "Carriage will be here any minute," he said. "I'll stay another few days. Wrap things up. Make sure nobody quietly misplaces those old documents." Poirot nodded approvingly. "A wise plan, Inspector." Graves studied the house. "Funny," he said. "I used to envy places like this. Old names, solid walls. After this, I think I prefer my little flat above the bakery." Poirot chuckled. "Houses," he said, "are like people. Some are honest. Some are hypocrites. Some are simply too fond of their own ghosts." Graves gave him a sidelong look. "You ever get tired of digging them up?" he asked. "Sometimes," Poirot admitted. "But then I think of what happens when no one digs. Young maids fall from balconies. Cousins die in locked rooms. Governesses carry burdens they did not choose." He spread his hands. "So the little gray cells must work, whether they are tired or not." The carriage rolled into view. Lord Ashcombe and Lady Helena walked down to see him off. They looked older, but also, in some fragile way, more real. Mr. Poirot, Lord Ashcombe said, I cannot pretend to be grateful for everything that has been uncovered. But I am grateful it was you who uncovered it. Poirot bowed his head slightly. Truth is rarely gentle, milord, he said. But it is kinder than the rot of secrets. Ashcombe nodded, eyes on the house. We will address what can be mended, he said, and accept what cannot. Poirot stepped into the carriage, then paused. One suggestion? He said. Schcomb glanced up. Yes. Stop calling your tragedies accidents, Poirot replied. Name them. Learn from them. That is how a house becomes less haunted. Lady Helena pressed a handkerchief to her lips, eyes wet. We will try, she said. Poirot settled into his seat. The carriage began to roll as it moved down the long drive. He looked back one last time. The moonlit chamber's window stood dark and still. No figure in it. No shadow. No glow above the great house. The moon so bright and cold the night Philip died lingered faintly in the pale morning sky. Thin as a scar, Poirot closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the wheels soothe him. Another case finished. Another house forced to look at itself. Another thread cut, another retied. Ravencrest Hall, he murmured to himself. You will tell fewer lies now, I think. He opened his eyes again, the ghost of a smile on his lips, and somewhere, he added softly, Agatha Christie would be pleased. The road curved. The house vanished behind bare winter trees, and Hercule Poirot, ever neat, ever composed, let his thoughts turn already, inevitably, to the next mystery waiting somewhere under another moon.